The morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the billionaire's penthouse, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Everything looked perfect, pristine, untouched, exactly the way the world expected a man like him to live. Jonathan Hayes had it all: wealth, influence, a perfect image, and a marriage that everyone envied. But perfection, as it often does, hides cracks. And that morning, one small crack was about to shatter everything. It started quietly. The air was calm, the city below bustling but distant. Jonathan's wife, Isabella, moved gracefully around the kitchen, carrying a cup of coffee with a smile that seemed almost rehearsed. He watched her, thinking about their plans for the day, the meetings he had, the deals waiting for him. He had no idea that a single moment would change the course of his life forever. "Don't drink it." The scream came out of nowhere, cutting through the quiet like a knife. Jonathan froze, cup halfway to his lips. His eyes snapped toward the voice, and there she was, Maria, the maid who had worked for them for nearly 5 years. Her face was pale, hands trembling, her voice raw with fear. It wasn't an ordinary warning. There was a terror in her eyes that made Jonathan's stomach twist. She wasn't just worried about the cup. She was terrified about what it contained. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Jonathan, the man who had faced boardroom battles, billion-dollar negotiations, and the fiercest critics, felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't know if he should be angry, confused, or scared. All he knew was that something was very wrong. He looked back at Isabella, expecting her to laugh it off or roll her eyes, but instead, she just smiled calmly, holding the cup as if nothing unusual had happened. That smile, it was too perfect, too controlled. Something about it made Jonathan doubt everything he thought he knew about her. Maria stepped closer, her voice shaking. "You can't. You have to listen. This isn't safe." "Not now." Jonathan could feel the tension rising, the air thick with unspoken danger. The cup in Isabella's hand looked harmless, just another ordinary cup. But Maria's reaction told a completely different story. In that instant, Jonathan realized that the truth behind that cup could destroy far more than just a morning routine. It could destroy his trust, his marriage, maybe even his life. Every instinct in him screamed to act, but he was torn. He wanted to confront Isabella, to demand the truth, but the fear in Maria's eyes held him back. The room seemed smaller now, the walls closing in with secrets and lies. Jonathan knew that whatever was in that cup wasn't just a threat to him. It was a revelation that would expose hidden truths he had never been ready to face. And so, standing there in the sunlight, with the city oblivious below, Jonathan had to make a choice. Trust the woman he thought he knew, or trust the maid who had risked everything to warn him. What he did next would change everything, and there was no going back. The cup waited, and so did the truth. Jonathan's hand hovered just above the cup, unsure where to grab it or step back. Maria's breathing was shallow, her hands clutching the edge of the counter, like she was holding herself together. Jonathan had seen her calm, quiet, efficient. She was always composed, handling everything in the house with precision, never complaining, never faltering. And yet, here she was, shaking as if she had seen something that could haunt her forever. It wasn't just the urgency in her voice. It was a raw fear, the kind that couldn't be faked. He glanced at Isabella again. She set the cup down slowly, deliberately, as if every second of hesitation was part of a performance. Jonathan had learned to read people in business, to notice small tells, subtle signs, but Isabella's expression was unreadable. Calm, almost serene, but with a faint glint in her eyes that sent a shiver down his spine. Something about her smile didn't reach her eyes. He realized then that the woman he had married, the woman he trusted with everything, might not be who he thought she was. Maria took a step closer, lowering her voice. "Mr. Hayes, I've never been wrong about this before. You need to listen. It's not just dangerous, it's personal." Jonathan's mind raced. Dangerous, yes, that he could understand. He could imagine accidents, mistakes, even deliberate sabotage. But personal? What could possibly be personal in a cup of coffee? The thought made his heart pound, and a cold knot of dread formed in his stomach. He had always prided himself on knowing the people around him. How could he have missed this? How could the truth be hiding in plain sight, in the most ordinary moment of the day? The memory of that morning came back in flashes. Isabella humming softly while arranging flowers on the counter, the sunlight catching her hair in a way that had always made him pause. The sound of her laughter during last night's dinner, light and melodic, as if nothing in the world could touch them. And yet, the scream, the fear in Maria's eyes, it all felt like a warning that shattered those memories, revealing cracks he had never seen. Jonathan realized he had been living in a carefully constructed illusion, one that could crumble in seconds. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, but the tension in the room was suffocating. Maria's hands trembled as she clutched the counter, and he noticed a small detail, a ring she wore, slightly scratched and worn, a sign of long nights and constant labor. She had been loyal for years, always in the background, never seeking attention. And now she was risking everything, shouting, trying to stop him from doing something he didn't even understand yet. That loyalty, that courage, made Jonathan question everything he thought he knew about loyalty and betrayal. Isabella reached for the cup again, her fingers brushing the rim, and Jonathan's heart skipped a beat. He wanted to stop her, but the words caught in his throat. Questions flooded his mind. Why now? What was she hiding? Was this about him, about her, or something even more dangerous? Maria's eyes never left the cup, never left him, as if her entire world depended on him making the right choice. The air in the penthouse felt heavier, charged with secrets, lies, and unspoken truths. Jonathan knew that whatever was about to unfold would change everything he thought he knew about his marriage, his home, and the life he had built. And yet, the answers remained just out of reach, hidden in a small, unassuming cup that carried the weight of revelation neither of them could ignore. Jonathan's hand trembled, hovering between trust and fear, between love and doubt. One wrong move, one sip, could change everything. And in that tense, unspoken moment, he realized he was standing on the edge of a truth he wasn't ready to face, one that could destroy the life he thought was unshakable. Jonathan stepped back, finally pulling his gaze from the cup, but his eyes never left Isabella. The tension in the room was thick, almost physical, pressing against his chest. Maria moved closer to him, lowering her voice to a hurried whisper. You don't understand, this isn't just about the cup. It's about everything that's been hidden. You need to see the truth before it's too late. Her words made Jonathan freeze again. Hidden? The thought sent a shiver through him. What could possibly be hidden in a life that seemed so transparent, so perfect to everyone else? He looked at Isabella, trying to read her expression, but she gave nothing away. She continued to smile, calm, deliberate, almost as if she knew she held all the cards. Her composure made Jonathan angrier, but beneath the anger was a gnawing fear he couldn't ignore. He had always thought he knew his wife. How could he have missed something this serious? Something this personal? Every memory of her now felt tainted with doubt. Had the life he built with her been built on secrets? Maria's hand shook as she pulled something out of her apron pocket. A small envelope. This explains a lot, she said, her voice tight. Jonathan reached for it cautiously, the weight of the envelope heavy in his hand despite its size. The name on it was familiar, someone from Isabella's past, but seeing it here, now in this context, made him wonder what she had been hiding all along. He realized the cup might just have been the trigger, the small spark that revealed a much bigger fire. As he held the envelope, a memory flashed. Isabella's late-night phone calls, the messages she had quickly deleted, the trips she claimed were for work, but never explained in detail. Everything suddenly seemed connected. Jonathan felt a tight knot in his chest. The woman he had trusted implicitly might have been keeping an entire life from him, and he had no idea what was real anymore. Meanwhile, Maria's fear didn't subside. There's more, she said, her voice trembling. You need to know who's involved, who's been part of this from the start. The cup, it was just the beginning. There are people who won't stop until they get what they want. Jonathan felt a chill. People who wouldn't stop? The thought of unseen forces working behind the scenes made the situation even more dangerous. This wasn't just a personal betrayal. This could be something bigger, something that threatened not only his marriage but the life he had built. He wanted to confront Isabella, demand answers, but fear kept him silent. She noticed his hesitation and tilted her head slightly, that calm smile never leaving her face. "Jonathan," she said softly, "you're overreacting. It's just a cup. Don't let Maria's imagination get to you." Her words sounded innocent, even reasonable, but Jonathan's instinct screamed otherwise. Something in her voice, in the way she moved, suggested that she had rehearsed this moment, that she knew the storm her secrets could unleash. Jonathan realized that the morning had changed everything. Trust, love, loyalty, they all felt fragile now, like thin glass waiting to shatter. He didn't know which was more dangerous, drinking the cup and risking whatever was inside, or staying silent and letting the secrets continue to grow. And as he looked between Maria and Isabella, he knew one thing with certainty. Nothing would ever be the same again. The city outside carried on as usual, oblivious of the tension in the penthouse. But inside, Jonathan understood that a storm had begun, a storm that would reveal hidden truths, test loyalties, and change the course of everyone's lives. And the cup, innocent in appearance, was only the first piece of the puzzle. Jonathan's hands were still trembling as he held the envelope, his mind racing with possibilities. Every instinct screamed that he was on the edge of something that could change his life forever. Maria's eyes never left him, wide with fear, as if the slightest wrong move could trigger a disaster. Isabella, meanwhile, remained calm, her smile unwavering, but Jonathan could see the subtle tension in her shoulders, the almost imperceptible tightening of her jaw. The calmness was an act. He was certain of it now. He carefully opened the envelope, the paper crinkling under his fingers. Inside were documents, photographs, and notes, fragments of a past he had never known about his wife. There were signatures, names, dates, things that hinted at hidden alliances, secret meetings, and promises made in shadowed corners of a world Jonathan had no idea existed. The realization hit him like a punch to the chest. This wasn't just a personal betrayal. This was a web, a network of secrets that Isabella had been managing quietly, perfectly, until now. Maria leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "I tried to warn you before. I didn't know how far it went. But now, it's too late for mistakes. You need to see what's really happening, who's involved, and why that cup was even made." Jonathan's eyes darted to the cup, now sitting innocuously on the counter, its surface reflecting the morning light. It looked harmless, but after everything, he could no longer see anything as ordinary. Every detail was loaded with meaning, every gesture potentially dangerous. Isabella moved toward the cup, her fingers brushing it again, and Jonathan felt a surge of anger and fear. He wanted to stop her, to demand answers, but words failed him. All he could do was watch as the woman he had trusted most in the world seemed to be testing him, daring him to act. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing with dread. The air in the penthouse felt electric, charged with suspicion, fear, and the weight of unspoken truths. Jonathan's mind raced. What if Maria was wrong? What if her warnings were exaggerated? A misunderstanding fueled by fear. But every instinct told him otherwise. The way she looked at Isabella, the urgency in her voice, the fear that made her hands shake. It wasn't false. Something dangerous was at play, something that threatened to unravel his entire life. He thought about his career, his reputation, his home, all of it vulnerable in ways he had never imagined. Isabella's voice cut through his thoughts, soft and calm, but with an edge that made Jonathan's stomach tighten. "Jonathan, you don't have to do anything you're afraid of. Just trust me." But her words, meant to soothe, had the opposite effect. They highlighted the growing chasm between them, the unspoken tension, the secrets, the fear that had been building for months and now threatened to explode. Maria stepped even closer, her gaze locking with his. "You have to make a choice," she said, almost pleading. "The moment you act, there's no turning back. And whatever happens, there's no undoing it." Jonathan's hands were sweating, the envelope heavy, the cup innocuous yet terrifying. He felt the weight of everything, the love, the trust, the lies, and the danger, all pressing down on him. For a moment, silence fell over the room, thick and suffocating. The city outside went about its day, but in the penthouse, time seemed to slow, every second dragging, every breath heavy with anticipation. Jonathan knew the next move, The next word, the next glance could ignite a chain reaction that would change everything. His heart raced, his mind spiraled, and he realized that nothing would ever be the same after this moment. And then Isabella's hand closed around the cup. As Isabella's fingers closed around the cup, Jonathan's heart skipped a beat. But before he could react, a sudden knock at the door made the room freeze in tense silence. The sound was sharp, deliberate, and commanding, a signal that they were no longer alone. Jonathan's mind raced. Who could be here now, at this precise moment, when the house already felt like a pressure cooker of secrets and fear? Maria stepped back, eyes wide. "It's them," she whispered, her voice trembling. Jonathan didn't need her to explain. The look on her face said everything. Whatever danger was in that cup, whatever Isabella had been hiding, it wasn't just confined to the walls of their home. It was part of something much bigger, something calculated, something that had been watching, waiting, and now was ready to strike. Isabella turned slowly, a faint smile playing on her lips, almost amused, almost cold. "Jonathan," she said, her tone eerily calm, "you're going to want to see this." Before he could respond, she placed the cup down carefully and moved toward a small intercom panel on the wall. The knock came again, louder this time, followed by a deep, familiar voice calling his name. Jonathan froze, his mind spinning. The voice wasn't just any visitor. It was someone from the business world, someone connected to secrets he thought were long buried. Jonathan took a cautious step toward the door, feeling Maria clutch his arm. "You shouldn't answer," she hissed. "Not yet. You don't know what they want, what this is really about." But before he could process her warning, the door opened on its own. Standing, there was a man in a sharp suit, eyes calculating, face unreadable. He held nothing in his hands, but the air around him seemed charged with authority and danger. Jonathan's stomach knotted. This wasn't a social call. The man stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "Jonathan Hayes," he said, voice low, steady, dangerous. "I believe you found something you weren't supposed to see." His eyes flicked toward the cup, and then to Isabella, who remained unerringly calm, her smile never faltering. Jonathan's mind raced. How could someone know? How could they already be involved in whatever web of secrets he was just beginning to uncover? Maria's hands gripped his arm tighter, her nails digging into his skin. "They're part of it," she whispered, urgency thick in her voice. "This isn't just your marriage. Jonathan, this is bigger. Way bigger than you ever imagined." Jonathan glanced at Isabella, but her expression gave nothing away. No panic, no concern, just an unnerving serenity. Something in him shifted. He realized that the woman he had trusted most might not just be hiding a personal secret. She might be entangled in a network of lies, manipulations, and dangerous alliances that Jonathan hadn't even seen coming. The suited man stepped closer, his gaze cold, calculating. "We don't have much time," he said, glancing around a luxurious penthouse. "Everything you think you know, your marriage, your life, even your decisions today, depends on what you do next. One wrong move and it's all gone." Jonathan felt the walls closing in, the envelope in his hands, the cup on the counter, Maria's terrified eyes, Isabella's unnerving calm, and now this stranger with secrets of his own. It was a storm, and he was in the center of it. Every instinct screamed danger, yet he had no idea which direction was safe. He realized then that nothing in his world was what it seemed. Every choice carried risk, every glance had meaning, and every word could tip the balance. The stakes weren't just about trust or betrayal anymore. They were about survival, power, and truths that could unravel everything he had built. Jonathan's eyes met Isabella's, then the man's, then Maria's. He had to make a decision. But the harder he tried to focus, the more the room seemed to close in, the cup seemed heavier, and the secret seemed darker. And in that tense silence, the reality sank in. Whatever happened next in his life and his marriage would never be the same. Jonathan's chest heaved as the weight of the moment pressed down on him. The envelope, the cup, the stranger, Maria's terrified eyes, Isabella's unnerving calm. It all collided into a whirlwind of fear and betrayal. He knew he couldn't wait any longer. Every second of hesitation could allow the secrets to escape him, or worse, allow someone else to control his fate. He stepped toward the cup, his mind sharp, focused, ready for the truth no matter how devastating. Isabella's calm smile faltered for just a fraction of a second as Jonathan picked up the cup. "Wait," Maria shouted, desperation in her voice. "Don't." But Jonathan cut her off a firm, trembling hand. He didn't drink. Instead, he lifted the cup carefully, inspecting it in the sunlight. That's when he noticed it. Tiny, almost imperceptible markings at the bottom of the cup. Symbols, initials, a pattern that didn't belong to the pristine set they used every morning. It wasn't coffee, it was a message, a warning. And suddenly, everything made sense. The cup had been intended to test him, to reveal who he trusted, to push him to act without thinking. Isabella's composure cracked then just slightly, but enough for Jonathan to see the truth. You think you understand, Jonathan," she said, voice low but strained, "but you don't. I didn't make that cup to hurt you. I made it to protect you from them." His eyes widened. "Them?" he asked, glancing at the suited man, who nodded slightly, lips pressed in a thin line. The stranger stepped forward. "Your wife intercepted an attempt on your life," he said, voice firm. "The cup, the warning. It was meant to prevent poisoning. Someone inside your business, someone you trusted, planned this. Isabella discovered it first. Try to stop it. That's why Maria screamed." Jonathan's mind reeled. The betrayal he imagined, the deception he feared. It wasn't Isabella's. She had been protecting him all along. Relief mixed with disbelief as he turned to Maria, who nodded, still shaking but calmer now. The pieces were falling into place. The cup, the envelope, the hidden alliances. It had all been a test of courage and awareness. But just as he reached for Isabella's hand, ready to confront the truth and embrace the woman who protected him, a new tension gripped the room. The suited man's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowning. "It's not over," he muttered. Jonathan felt the old fear return, sharp and cold. "What do you mean?" he demanded. The man held up a photo, a new image one Jonathan hadn't seen, showing a familiar figure lurking near his office, someone he considered an ally. His heart sank. The danger wasn't gone. It had only shifted, moved to a new target, a new plan. Isabella's eyes met his, filled with urgency. "We have to be careful," she said softly. "This was never just about the cup. It's bigger than us, and now they know we're on to them. Everything from now on will change." Jonathan swallowed hard, the adrenaline still surging. He had survived the immediate threat, uncovered the secrets, and saved his life. But the larger battle was just beginning. For a moment, silence fell. The cup sat on the counter, harmless looking again, but now it symbolized everything: betrayal, trust, danger, and survival. Jonathan realized that his world, his marriage, his life had been forever transformed. He had thought he had all the answers, but the final twist was clear. In a world built on secrets, the truth was never simple, and the real danger was only beginning to reveal itself. And as he looked at Isabella, Maria, and the suited man, Jonathan knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same, and the next move would determine everything. Jonathan sank into the leather chair near the window, the city skyline stretching endlessly beyond the glass. His hand still shook slightly, the tension of the morning slowly fading, replaced by a mix of relief and exhaustion. Isabella sat across from him, her expression soft now, the calm reassurance he had almost forgotten returning. Maria stood nearby, still tense but quieter, finally allowed herself to exhale. The cup remained on the counter, harmless now, a reminder of the chaos that had erupted from such a simple object. Jonathan finally looked at Isabella. I thought I knew everything about you," he said, his voice low, still rough from the adrenaline. I thought you were hiding from me, but it was the opposite, wasn't it?" She nodded, her eyes glistening with mixture of relief and lingering worry. "I was protecting you, Jonathan, not just from them, but from yourself, from believing in a world that isn't always what it seems. I couldn't risk anything happening to you, not even for a moment." Maria stepped forward, holding the envelope. "The documents, the messages, the photos, we've secured everything," she said, a faint smile breaking through her fear. "We know who tried to manipulate you, who wanted to harm you. The threats are contained. For now." Jonathan felt a wave of gratitude toward her. Maria, the loyal maid who had risked everything, had been the true guardian that morning. Without her, he wouldn't be sitting here, alive and aware of the dangers lurking around him. The suited man, who had been silent for most of the confrontation, finally spoke. "You survived the first round," he said. "But as Isabella said, the world you live in is full of shadows. You've learned to recognize them now. That knowledge is more valuable than anything else." Jonathan nodded slowly. The city outside continued as usual, unaware of the storm that had passed through his penthouse, unaware of the secrets revealed, the dangers averted, and the trust that had been tested and ultimately proven stronger than he had imagined. Jonathan reached for Isabella's hand. "I don't know what would have happened without you," he admitted, feeling the weight of the morning lift, "or without Maria." Isabella squeezed his hand gently. "You're not alone," she said. "None of us are. The cup was just a warning, a signal, a test. The rest we face together." Jonathan realized in that moment that trust, even after betrayal and fear, could be rebuilt. Loyalty, courage, and love were stronger than deception, and sometimes the people you least expect were the ones protecting you the most. As the tension finally eased, Jonathan looked at the cup one last time. A simple object, ordinary to anyone else, but to him, it was a symbol of awareness, vigilance, and survival. It reminded him that life, no matter how perfect it appears, is full of hidden truths, and the most important thing is the people who stand with you when danger strikes. Later, as the sunlight shifted and the room grew warm, Jonathan, Isabella, and Maria shared a quiet moment. No words were needed. They understood each other. They had faced deception, fear, and danger together, and survived. Jonathan knew there would be more challenges, more secrets, more tests of trust, but for the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of calm. The cup, the warning, the chaos. They had all led to a truth worth cherishing. Loyalty, courage, and love could withstand even the darkest threats. And in that penthouse, high above the city, Jonathan finally let himself believe that some things, trust, family, and the people who truly care, could never be taken away.